Hey, what's up, guys? DJ.MAGIC here. How's everybody doing? I'm doing alright myself. I'm doing a topic today that might be considered a bit heavy, again, like the bullying one. So, this topic concerns the premise of building a family. And what that means to me specifically is sometimes there are people in this world that are just not lucky enough to be able to stick with the family they were born into, or in some cases, you just were born not having a family for whatever reasons, due to circumstance. But I'm gonna be talking about my experiences regarding that. So, building a family, definitely not easy, and I that's why I volunteered to do the Minnycast today because I feel like I told Minnie that I had a lot of I had a lot to say about this topic. Let's just put it that way. So I think what I'm gonna get into is at first I'm gonna tell you a little bit of background history regarding my family, and I'm just gonna try to touch on little things here and there, and hopefully I can get to the point as soon as I can. Basically, how it all began was, and this is going to be a bit sensitive, so I do apologize in advance. But once I tell you, you'll understand why I basically had to do what I had to do. So, when I was born, I found out, I guess I found this out when I was in my early 20s through my brother. But when I was born, my parents weren't planning on having another child. That was the fourth. So my mother, back in the day, in third world countries, it was more common to practice abortions because certain families just weren't able to, I guess, support another baby. So it was more common then. So long story short, my mom tried to, I guess, abort me, and that resulted in my visual impairment and a few other physical complications that I shouldn't get into. But so that happened without me knowing until I was 20. But as a child, I was sheltered a lot, and as you may know, I was bullied, and my family was a big part of that. My older brothers especially, would pick on me because my father was overprotective with me, and so therefore they lashed out on me whenever they would get in heat for doing something wrong. My father spoiled me, so I never got any sort of trouble like they did. Nothing in comparison anyway. So my brothers really resented me growing up, and probably still do. So, growing up, I never really had a bond with, like a good bond with my brothers. There was always something drawing us apart. And so, I ended up being sheltered till I was about 14, and at 14, I went to I went to the all blind kids school, and that was worded awkwardly, sorry. So I went to the school that was for basically all blind kids, and that was when I would be away from my family for about a week. For the whole week. I'd come back for like the weekend or holidays, so I didn't really get to see my actual family. So that's when I started figuring out the premise of building a family, because I had good friends there that I would talk to all the time, and because we were also sheltered there, that's all we had was each other, right? So I went there and discovered a bit of what that meant throughout, 14 and up. Then I left that place and I ended up going to a regular high school, and turns out that's when I had to live with my family, and I realized just how bitter they were towards me because my father died when I was 14, and all that resentment that my brothers had for me and my aunts and uncles, my aunts and uncles also resented me because of the same reason. My father would, give them heck if something were to happen to me or whatever. He was a lot harder on them because he was so overprotective of me, right? And so they all resented me, and so when my father passed away, turns out all that resentment poured out all at once, and that's when I really felt it. They would, just stupid little things like exclude me from family gatherings. There'd be times when I would go over to see my younger cousins and they would eat and try to hide food from me and just be really rude to me, right? So I started seeing them less and less. And again, the premise of wanting to build a family, just discover what that word was supposed to mean for me, was very different and difficult. So it was quite a journey. So after that point, I ended up going to college. I left my mom's place because after dad died, long story short, she took some of the money that was supposed to go to me and bought a small condo for herself. So I ended up living there for a little bit, and we clashed a lot because she wanted to live her life because my father, he abused her and he pretty much kept her from having any friends. So when he passed away, she just went nuts and, did everything that she wanted that she couldn't do before because he was around. They married at a young age. So there was a lot of resentment towards my dad that came out from my mom, and it was displayed through her actions. And because I was spoiled, she resented me as well because he would beat her every time something wrong would happen to me. And so after we clashed, my mom and I left the condo. I ended up living with my brother for a while. And I thought I could trust him and his wife, but turns out they were using me to get extra money so that way they could go shopping more. And I found this out because he pretty much confessed it to me when he got upset with me when I told him I finally had enough. They would use me as like a housemaid, like they would leave dishes out on purpose and expect me to do everything. And so I pretty much had to go out just to gain some peace of mind while I was there. So after that happened, I ended up getting my own place, I wanted to get life started. And I was lost for a little bit. Like I had a basement apartment, just in a nice quiet neighborhood. And that's when I started discovering just how alone I really was at that point. None of my actual family reached out to me. They were just glad that I was gone and no longer inconveniencing them, I guess. And now that dad was gone, there was nobody to remind them that I was still family, and there was nobody, to keep things in check the way he used to. So it just all fell apart. So after I got my own place, I realized that I needed to start building more connections around me, and just so I could have some sort of comfort zone, some sort of, social circle, something that I could be a part of, because there was something missing now that I didn't have my family that I was supposed to have from the beginning. And so I had difficulties trying to figure that out, and I enjoyed having my first place. I had a small circle of friends that would come over, and I was just discovering myself in a way that I could never do when I did live with actual family members. I was always restricted or sheltered, So after I got my first place, I ended up moving into the property that my mom bought afterwards. And from there, she wasn't living there when I moved in. She lived down the street. It was fine for a little while. We tried to patch things up, but then the whole premise of her stealing money from me occurred, and I was trying to get some of that back, and we fought. And so I ended up leaving that property because I couldn't stand it anymore. I couldn't focus on getting my own life together, and I was just too focused on feuding with family members. So luckily I met Minnie, and she got me out of that predicament, and everything's fine. But I discovered, throughout all of that building a family for yourself is imperative. Like, if you guys out there that are listening are put in a similar, if not worse, situation where you just cannot rely on your family, or just straight up feel alone, just reach out to friends or anybody that's willing to listen, that can and will be genuine with you, and I promise you everything will be okay, because it turned out alright for me. I have a small circle of friends now, we have Minnie's family, and I couldn't be happier. Just, it doesn't have to be a huge circle, just have something. Build your family, guys. If you have been put in an unfortunate circumstance where you just can't define the word family, or you don't feel any sort of comfort with that word in your head, then work on building a small circle, and hopefully you guys can build a family the way I did. Because as painful as the experience was, I wouldn't change a thing in regards to how it all turned out for me in the end. So I hope you guys, learned something. I hope I wasn't too rambly. And I mean, really, it was tough to talk about, but in the end of the day, I feel like to those who it may concern, that this would actually be very helpful. Because if somebody were to sit down and tell me this when I was going through what I was going through, everything would have been put into perspective. But you know what they say, there's no better teacher than experience itself, and hindsight is 2020, right? So I'll leave it at that, guys. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Minnycast. Make sure to check out all the other series that Minny has on the channel. And until next time, guys, hope you have a good one, and I hope that this was very informative and that you enjoyed it. So until next time, guys, DJ.MAGIC out.